Barth, Barth. Everything will come up. My website will come up. You can purchase it. You can go on the website. The website might help you a lot also. It can be bought on Amazon.com. It can be ordered through Barnes and Nobles. Any bookstore can order it. So it's pretty much available anywhere where anybody is that has any availability.
I see. Okay, very good. Um, let's go back to your early childhood there, because that's where as I said, the story starts. Tell us exactly what happened when you were so young.
Well, the first instance, I was 4 years old. So I don't have a lot of memory of that except when I got older. And when I say older, I mean I was married to my husband. Actually, we were engaged when I first told him what had happened to me. And he was the very first person I had ever told. Uh, when I did share it with my mom when I was in my early 20s, she did tell me that at 4, my grandfather, my dad's father, had sexually abused me. And I was about 4 in the picture you're showing now. Um, the memory I have of that is my grandfather had a coal bin, and I used to go in there and get coal for the snowman's eyes when my brother and I made snowmen. And that's the memory I have. I was always terrified of that coal bin. And my memory is that when I went to get coal for the snowman's eyes, that my grandfather in his workshop, that's that's where. And my mom, when she bathed me that night, she discovered it. So that was the beginning of of the child abuse.
Now, did this abuse lasted for very long, or your mother was able to find out what was going on within a short period of time?
Well, what happened was that's the only instance of that because my mom did go after my grandfather, but like even today, we think we've came so much further, but in some ways we haven't. But my mother did approach my father and my grandmother. But the thing is, it was pushed under the rug. It was like she must be mistaken, and she was only 4 years old. She'll get over it. And so everything pretty much lay dormant then until I was 7 going on 8 years old. That's when my mom and father separated, and the book will share a lot of this. And then what happened was when they separated, we because of economics had to live with my father. My mom could not make enough money to support the 4 of us. Back then, the laws weren't there to make my dad support us. And so it came up that we would stay with my dad and spend about 4 of the days with my mom during the week. But shortly after they separated, even before they were divorced, my dad began sexually abusing me. And he did abuse me on and off pretty regularly till I was almost 14, old enough to stop him.
Who abused you? Your dad, you said?
My father, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so there were actually two, supposed to be trustworthy individuals in your life from your family. You had a real hard time simply because they were supposed to take care of you.
Yes, it was hard because people always thought I have 3 brothers and I was the youngest. So people always thought that I was daddy's little girl. Um, and the thought of that can still nauseate you because I was anything but that. So, but it's a funny thing. God does restore. And more than another story of victimization, the book will inspire people, encourage people, and I believe it will put them on the healing journey because you can heal. And that's the whole message of the book, even though they won't know that that's what the book is saying, because the book is written in novel form. But it's a story of love, of inspiration, of where my hope came from, how I had the strength to overcome and deal with this. And it's more a story of victory than it is another. So I would encourage people to read it because the thing is, people have to understand that the way statistics are, and we can get into that shortly, but statistics show that it would be literally almost impossible for anyone living to not be affected by abuse. The statistics are so epidemic that if you go through this life and never have a friend or a daughter or a son or a cousin or an aunt or a friend or a coworker or even you yourself, and you're not affected by some kind of abuse, then I want to know where you live because the statistics show that that's going to be a high in probability. And that's why people, if they read the book, it will help them deal with abuse. It will help them understand the abuser. It will help them understand the abused. And it will also help you understand, if you've been abused, why the emotions ricochet through you and threaten to destroy you. But the joy and the hope is that it does not have to destroy you. You can heal. And that's the whole purpose of the book. You can heal.
Okay, you were saying that the you anybody must have at some time during their life should might have gone through or should have gone through some kind of an abuse. Are you saying that there is nobody spared? I mean, everybody goes through it.
No, I'm saying that somewhere in your life, you will be impacted by someone who has been abused. Uh,
Ah,
you yourself may not be,
okay.
but see, the statistics in America show that every 2 minutes in America, someone is sexually abused
You mean to say every 2 minutes someone was sexually abused?
in America.
Wow.
Yes,
Now,
that's statistic. Now, it also shows that 1 in 4 girls have been sexually abused, and 1 in 6 boys have been. But you have to understand that is based on an estimated 40% report rate, which
wow.
means 60% are not reported. If you include 60% more in, the numbers are more like 1 in 2 and 1 in 3.
Well, that makes sense because from my experience, fortunately, I did not go through any of this. I mean, there may be slight abuse here and there, I mean, manageable, but to the extent that you are talking about, I don't think I have gone through or somebody in my family, but I do remember. Now you brought it up. Some of my cousins or distant cousins have gone through some severe form of abuse, either by strangers or somebody else in their own family or at the church or other locations. So it makes sense that 1 and 2 would have experienced it. And those of us who are have not gone through this may just simply have to say that we were lucky. That's about it.
Well, you can even be more than lucky. If you become aware of it, you will be able to help people know that they can heal. Because if someone doesn't let the people that have been abused know that they can heal, it will destroy them in one way or form. Uh, and if it doesn't destroy them, it will definitely ricochet through the lives that they have relationships with.
Yes, I totally agree with that point. For example, if somebody has gone through sexual abuse or any kind of abuse, uh, they have to heal from this kind of scenario. Otherwise, they won't be empathetic about their own situation and they won't be empathetic to others who are going through it. And those of us who have not gone through this, uh, you know, uh, we are technically speaking, we should be also more empathetic, and we should be because the empathy in a person is actually extinguished by this kind of behavior from parents and others. So, so I am hoping that I am more empathetic than those, or I mean, at least as empathetic as those who have gone through the healing process. I do agree because I was watching another episode in India again because that's the news I was getting. There was a blind school, and I'm sorry, the school for the blind, and there were these children between the age of 2 to 3 up to 10, 12 ages old. They were sitting there. They're all blind, and it's an orphanage type. And there was a blind teacher beating up on a blind child, and it was taken on a video, and you can see the little boy was screaming. Now, naturally, it is totally, it looks like it's not a totally an orphanage because then the child's parents or some relative came to the school, and there they have vigilante justice. So they came and beat up the teacher who beat up the child, and eventually they was taken out, and then gone taken to the police. As a matter of fact, the police has to come to the school to rescue the teacher who was getting beaten up. Okay, well, in a way that you can see how ridiculous that whole situation was, and how parents were so upset that they are getting beaten up by the children are getting beaten up, especially this little blind boy, beaten up by this other person. It was just horrible. Coming back to what you are saying is that is it possible? Therefore, this brings up a very important question. If you do not heal, then is it possible of the cycle of violence will continue generation after generation?
I do a study on that, and I can touch on it briefly. It's a whole study in itself, and it's from victim to victor.
Uh huh.
Uh, and the thing is that we don't have a choice over being hurt, and we don't have a choice over pain, and we don't have a choice over being a victim. I wish we did, but most of us do not have that choice. But once it happens, uh, we do have a choice, because when that happens, we will get angry. When you get hurt, you feel pain, and when you feel pain, you will feel anger. We are just made that way, every single one of us. Even Saint Teresa, that's just a common reaction. Anybody who shuts their finger in the car door, they're not going to say, "Wow, that's fun. Let's do it again." you will
Exactly.
get you will get hurt, you will feel pain, and you will get angry. The question then becomes, do we stay with that anger? Do we hold on to that anger? Or do we release it? And do we ever forgive that person? Or do we hold on to unforgiveness? And do we hurt people and hurt ourselves because of the anger and unforgiveness? Because we will do one or the other. It's a process. If we are angry, then we can't forgive people, and if we can't forgive them, then we are either going to hurt ourselves, or we will take that anger somewhere. It's like a bullet, free bullet inside of us. It will ricochet, and on a trigger, it will go off either inwardly or outwardly. So then we either hurt or we help. We either surrender or we become a controller. And in that process, we either go from victim to victor. We become a victim. We First we're abused, then we're a victim, then we're a survivor. Then after that, we either become an overcomer, a conqueror, and a victor. Or if we choose to go the other way, we are hurt, we are abused, we're a victim, we're a survivor, same thing. But then we either become a revenger, a retaliator, and an abuser. One leads to life, the other leads to death. So we have a
Hmm.
choice from the anger on down, but no one teaches us how to heal. We have to deal to heal, to feel again. And the reason there's so many catastrophic serial killers and rapists and so much of this going on is because a lot, and I'm not justifying, I'm just trying to get people to understand what we've created in our society, as we have desensitized these little kids, that they grow up and be desensitized adults, and no one tells them how to heal.
So, in your life, you have gone through this series of phases in your life of going through, and then fortunately, instead of becoming choosing evil and death, you chose life and love. Okay, very very interesting scenario here. But this is where you could have gone either way, because you
Very
could have gone this way or that way. What
much.
was the motivation in your life that made you choose life and love?
And also understand, not everyone turns evil from this, and not everyone heals because they don't know they can heal. They can heal. Um, the thing is that there are a lot of good people out there, and you probably know this, but one of the leading causes of suicide in our young people under 18 years old, the leading cause of death in 18 years is the third leading cause, suicide.
Hmm.
And a lot of that is because, like I say, it's not always directed outward as the serial killer or the rapist. A lot of times it's directed inwardly. I know a lot of good people that are carrying the burden of abuse. It's amazing since I've written the book, because people will come up to me and talk to me. They'll come up to me at get togethers. They'll come up to me at church. They'll come up to me in the business we had, men and women, and share with me. I had one person share with me who was over 60 years old. And when he shared it with me, he said it was the first time he had shared it was 2 weeks before he'd share it with me.
Really? Hmm.
He carried, and you carry that, and it will, like I say, it will ricochet. The difference for me, I can tell you what happened to me is my dad was alcoholic, uh, and he was abusive. Um, he didn't marry women. A woman, he had a woman live with us for a while, and that's in the book too, who was very physically abusive to us. She used to beat on us when he wasn't around. If she had an argument with him, she would take it out on us. Um, Ultimately they broke up because she jumped on top of me and really beat me up pretty good.
Wow.
Um, but the thing that changed my life, and this is the true hope, is I was just this little girl walking up a dirt road to a little church that sat on the top of a hill. It's not a church any longer, but it's still a dirt road. I visited about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And my brothers, it was like a Norman Rockwell painting. My three brothers were barely 4 years apart. We were ages 8, 7, 6, 5.
Uh-huh.
5, 7, and 8. We're barely a year apart, all four of us. And we would walk up this little dirt road, and my little Cocker Spaniel, Mamie, was her name. She'd follow us up and sit at the church door until we were done Sunday school and follow us back home. But it was in that little Sunday school that I learned about a God who was real, and he loved me. And I had to wonder, how could I be so special that the God of all the universe loved me? And people say, well, how, yeah, you hear God loves you and this, but how did you know that? How did it sink in? And I can remember the first time I was about 5 years old, and we were down this little basement Sunday school. And the Sunday school teacher said, if you want Jesus to come into your heart, just ask him to come into your heart when we sing this song. And I still remember the song. The song was, come into my heart, Lord Jesus. Come in today, come in to stay, come into my heart, Lord Jesus. And at first I peeked a little bit to see if my brothers were doing it, because if my brothers did it, it was cool. If my brothers didn't do it, then it probably wasn't worth doing. But they had their heads bowed. And I can remember that experience. And I can remember, I believe that was the beginning of the hope, the thread of hope. And all through my life, I went to that thread of hope. And
How old were you when you had that hopeful experience?
I was about 5 or 6.
Oh, that engage.
Yeah. And then when I was 8, I had another experience where they had an evangelist come to the little country church. It was pretty exciting for this little church. The dog didn't come that day.
Oh.
And they had an altar call, and again, I was with my brothers, and my oldest brother stepped out to go to the altar, and we all followed him, and we all went up and gave our heart to Jesus that day. And from then on, I can't say as a kid I didn't understand all of the walk with God. Unfortunately, I got all the religion of God, a lot of that, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't get a lot of the relationship. But as I grew, he became very special. He was the one that I prayed for. He was the one that when I thought of killing myself said, not that way, not that way.
All right. So between the age of 4 and 14, you had this abuse problem,
Yes,
and especially in the house. But at the same time, you were able to embrace the God and other good news. But um, you were still enduring this abuse during this whole time.
yes,
How so? Is your love for God and the church or the religious or relationship aspect of it is kept you going? But were you not broken every time this happened while you were going through this until age 14?
the book, people who've read the book, and even my husband, when he read the book, he broke down in tears. And I said to him, I said, but you knew my story. I said, why does it affect you reading it? And he said, well, you can be like Tom Sawyer and read. He says, and here it's a good story. He says, but when you read the book, you're going on the raft with him. You're on the river with him. And he said, when I read your book, he said, Mark, I was there with you. He says, and I felt it happening. And that's what happens when the reader reads the book. It's different than a lot of books, the way I've written it. You become that little girl. You understand the pain. You understand the shattering. I mean, there were times that I couldn't read. I lost all concentration. There was other times when I lost 20 pounds and I was a skinny kid. And my nerves were shot. It was really made worse by the woman who lived with us for about 3 years because she physically beat us. And
Physically beat you.
yes, during that time, the sexual abuse would let up because my dad had a woman in the house, but the physical abuse was really hard. Uh, because she had this thing, and it's in the book. She had this, her son had a little, one of those little construction, hammer. Do you ever see the little hammers, the toy hammers that
Yes.
kids have? And it's funny, I was down at my son's and I picked up my little grandson's little hammer to his set. And I said to my son, why do they still make these hammers yellow? Because all the little sets I've ever seen, and this was a yellow plastic hammer. My brothers and I still talk about it, but back then it was longer. Plastic was a little heavier duty, and that became her weapon of choice. So when she would get mad, she was a big woman. She'd flip us over our lap and she'd nail us with that plastic hammer, and she would beat us
Hmm.
until my brother wouldn't cry. That was his way of maintaining control. I cried before she hit me because it drove her nuts. So my form of control was cry and drive her nuts. His form of control was be quiet and not let her not cry.
Ah.
But
So when your mother came to know about the abuse from your grandfather, did she confront him?
she confronted my grandmother.
Oh,
I don't know that she ever confronted my grandfather. My dad didn't want her to even confront my grandmother. But my mom, I have to say this. I adore my mom.
mm-hmm.
My mom got a really bad rap of the economics of the situation. If it wasn't for my mom was a real stability. Some people who read the book said she's actually the heroine in the book. And people can't understand that because they don't understand, first of all, that she didn't know what was going on. When she found out that this woman was beating on us, my mom was half her size, but was really, really ready to tear into her. And when she actually finally jumped over the car seat one day and jumped on top of me and pounded me with her fist, when my mom found out about that, she came over and she backed that woman clear up into a bedroom, and the woman shut the door and was so scared she climbed out the window and ran away. But my mom was ready to kill her. So my mom did all she could, and she was a real stability in my life. And she didn't know a lot about religion, but she taught me how to pray as a little girl, and she taught me to call on God. And no matter how bad life got, I knew she loved me. She really loved me. So she just deserves that honor. She really does.
Okay. So your grandma and grandpa, are they from your mother's side or father's side?
No, it was my father. All
Okay,
this abuse came from my father's
father
side.
side. Okay, now your mother, did she know about your father's abuse of you?
Not until I was about 21.
How were you able to, or how he was able to hide this from her?
Well, my brothers too. Um, I told it was a process, and that'll be in the sequel. I've had a lot of requests for a sequel, and the sequel will be called. It'll be a sequel to The Shattering called Finding Julie. The first book deals with dealing with abuse and dealing with the issues of abuse, and it will help people to get to that point. The second book will deal with the confrontations that I had with my father. My father and I had multiple, I mean, many confrontations when I got older about this sexual abuse. Uh, it became a real battleground between him and I.
So when you realized whatever he was doing to you was sexual abuse, uh, uh, when did you realize that?
The first time, I really feel a child may not know anything about sex,
Uh-huh.
but but when they are violated in any way or form,
They would know right away.
they know virtue. You know that story in the Bible where the woman touches Jesus's garment
Yes.
and Jesus turns and it said he felt virtue go out of him.
Right.
I think that's what happens to a child. They know
So
that that virtue has something's been taken from them.
so intuitively, the child knows. that what is right and what is
I
wrong.
did, I did, and I believe most people I've talked to, that's my consensus. I really believe they do. Yes.
Hmm. We know that is okay. So you knew immediately on the very first instance that this is not appropriate behavior from your father. Now,
Yeah.
when did you actually confront him? How old were you?
Oh my, I was probably in my later 30s.
Really? So you waited that long?
Well, I probably did what most people do, and I hope this helps people. I put it under the rug. I tried to say, okay, he was drinking. He doesn't do that anymore. Don't say anything. He's remarried. You'll ruin his marriage. Just go in, visit him, and just pretend that none of this ever happened. Just you know, make everything normal. That was my just make everything normal. Fix everything, and I tried that, and it didn't work. It
No.
really it doesn't work.
So you were basically protecting him until you confronted him.
I think I was protecting everyone. I think I
Yeah.
was protecting the family. I was protecting, and I was protecting myself.
Ah.
See, the victim suffers. People ask me, Marty, why didn't you speak up? People call me Marty, my
Okay.
nickname. They call me Marty, and they said, why didn't you ever speak up? And I said, well, there's I can sum it up in 4 words, and it's the reason most abuse victims, if not all, do not speak up. It's fear and shame and guilt and blame. You don't understand what's happened to you, but somehow you fear it like crazy. You feel the shame of it. You feel guilty from it, and you feel you're to blame. And you may not have reasons for any of that, but that'll keep you quiet.
So so that actually kept you quiet. So when you first confronted him when you were uh, 30 years or so old,
Hmm.
so explain to our audience because this is very critical. You know, this is a scene that I want to hear about. So you worked up your courage and you probably thought about this for many days before you were going to confront him. Is that right?
Well, what had happened was I had started working at a drug rehab hospital, and I was working in the therapy end of it. At that time, I actually typed up the notes of the therapy, and God began to deal with my heart to deal with this. And I wrestled with him, and I said, no, God, I don't need to. I lived through it. I'm past it. I've even forgiven him, and I'm okay. I have a good husband. I have children. I don't live there. Everything's good. That was long ago. That was in the past. Don't need to deal with it. Um, but I had so much pain inside, and I had so much anger, and my anger was always directed inward more than outward. And triggers would just make it, you just get so angry that you can't even stand yourself. I used to say, God, what's wrong with me? I can't even stand myself. And God began to say, you need to heal from this. And he said, am I God enough to bring you through it and not God enough to heal you from it? And so he said, you're going to have to confront your dad. So there was several in that all these confrontations, and there were many, and I'll tell you a few, but they're in the next book. I got the next book halfway through, and the confrontations, painful as they are, that's part of the healing journey. And when I got strong enough, my dad called me one time, and I said to him, well, I'll be coming in, but I'm not going to visit unless we can talk. And he said to me, he said, about what? And when my dad was nervous, he would cough and he would clear his throat. It
Okay.
was, it, it was a, and it was like, what about? And I said, I think you know what about.
Oh, wow.
And he got real quiet and he, wait a minute. And I'm thinking, I'm inside and I'm saying a prayer while I'm talking. And I said a prayer when this came up like this the whole time. And I'm thinking, this is going to be great. I always had this feeling I'm going to confront him. And this wasn't the first confrontation. It was one of the major ones. And I always thought he's going to see what he did. He's going to be sorry for it. I think the victim always wants to know that the perpetrator was sorry for what they did.
Right.
And I have to let them know that your healing isn't based on that. And they
Hmm.
got to get past that their healing isn't based on what the perpetrator did or thinks or anything. That's his issues. Um, but I waited for my dad's answer. and his wife must have been near. But anyway, he said real quietly, but in his dad control, intimidating, manipulating voice that he always used on us when we were little, he said, "Don't start something you can't finish."
Ah,
That was his answer to me.
okay.
And it,
How did that hit you?
like a lead of bricks, I realized real quick how much I had not healed.
Yeah, in other words, he was still able to intimidate you even after you have worked up your courage to confront him.
Yes.
And okay, so it hits you like ton of bricks. Um, then did you meet him in person? And then shortly
There,
thereafter?
nope. There was distance. I put the ball in his court. And I said, I will be over at mom's when I come in. If you want to visit, you can visit. If you don't, that's up to you.
Hmm.
I had already set the ground rules. We were going to deal with this issue. It wasn't going to be under the carpet. See, people don't understand when you stick stuff under the carpet. If we clean house,
Yes,
anyone cleans house, you sweep the dirt under the carpet, your house looks real clean.
that's right.
Until one day you're walking and you trip and you fall flat on your face and you're like, what in the world did I trip over? And you look and there's this big lump on your carpet
Right.
and it's where you stuck everything.
Hmm.
And what happened with me is from that time on, God shook my carpet.
Yes.
And I thank God he did, because he brought me on a healing journey that now that I'm not only whole, but I can share with others to say you can be made whole. Because people go into addictions because of this. They go into alcoholism because of this. They go into suicide because of this. They become the abuser because of this. Um, it is something that if people do not deal with it, and if they do not heal, they will cease to feel. And it will affect your relationships with your spouse, with your kids, with your friends, because you just don't know how to get through those obstacles. And a lot of people get stuck with the anger.
Hmm.
I can tell you, anger became a cloak of comfort for me.
So
If
you were angry throughout those years?
Yeah, but mine was a quiet anger. So I think
Ah,
mine was harder to recognize. Everyone always saw me as this happy-go-lucky, Marty's got it in control, and this facade.
that you
Eh,
created a facade for yourself that others were fooled. They
Well,
didn't
I don't
know.
even think it was meant to be a facade. It
Hmm.
was just, and actually, in part, it wasn't. I came into really being me. Um, and I like what God made me. That's a part of healing too. Uh, but I didn't like that anger I'd feel inside. It didn't take much to trigger it. But see, I suppressed it. See, a lot of people you'll do one or the other. You'll suppress it till it kills you, or you'll be a loose cannon. You'll be one of them once they're angry. You better give them some space for about 2 days. But anger one way or the other. But one day God said to my heart, He says, I can take that anger.
Hmm.
And it's funny, Dr. Rob. You know what I said to God? Like I'm gonna tell God, right? But God and I have this cool relationship, and I want people to know they can too. You can just talk to God. He gets it. He really does. And I said, but God, I do want you to take this anger, but you know what? This wasn't right. I don't even remember the situation, but I was saying, this wasn't right. This really hurt. This just made, back home we say it this way. It made me so angry I could spit dust. That's how we express it back home in West Virginia. And I was just like, but it's not right. And after I got it all out, God said to my heart, He says, but I can take it from you. And I said, okay, God, take it from me. But just know this wasn't right. And I did that 3 or 4 times. I went through that, explaining to God how wrong it was. And He very patiently said, but I can take the anger from you if you want me to. And
Hmm.
it took all I had to really ask God to take it, because I wanted to hang on to that. I had a right to be angry, and I didn't want to lose that right. I had lost everything else. So I
Hmm.
didn't want to give that up. It became kind of a comfort to me.
I see. This that's interesting because you fear shame, guilt, and blame, and also anger. And I remember one of my close friends. Apparently, I did not know the exact details, but there were some bits and pieces that she was abused by her parents, either one or both of them. Now, naturally, she got very mentally ill, because of this as she was growing up. And eventually, what she would do, and I have seen this my personally, it's very heartbreaking. She will take a razor blade and start cutting herself. And that was one way for her to go ahead and release all her anger. And you said that either you direct your anger towards others, or you continue to perpetrate to the next generation and abuse your own kids, or you take a blade or something like what this lady was doing, and you cut yourself. So in your case, you had anger, and you were able to transform this on a more positive way, and then you wanted to again go back and confront your father and ask him, hey, what was going on? The couple of questions I have for you in that regard. Number one, um, did he actually uh, dealt with this problem, and did he confess that he actually abused you?
Wow. Um, might take a longer interview. We, like I said, we had lots of confrontations. I ran into him once in a store back home when I was home visiting, and we got into it. I don't mean yelling and raving, but we had a really rough conversation. And
Is this at the store?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And others were watching this?
Well, we were kind of
It's
at the
kind of
front
isolated.
talking. I
Okay.
mean, we weren't yelling or ranting and raving, but when he was in full form, and at that point, so was I.
Okay.
I had really learned with God's help to I wasn't afraid of my dad, and that really bothers an abuser. They want to be the abuse is about control.
Right.
My personal feeling is I had asked God one time how to pray for my dad because I had to get through all my emotions of wanting to strangle him. I mean, I'm being honest. And I said, God, if you give me a vision for his lost soul, I'd be able to pray for him. And I actually had a dream shortly after that I had prayed that. And in the dream, my dad had abused a person. And I was seeing all this unfold. And instead of seeing the controlling dad, the manipulating, intimidating dad that was the abusive dad, it was like his mask had been pulled off, and I saw the broken person underneath that.
Hmm.
I never really saw that in real life. And I began to see all his fear and all the hurt and pain. And I have to wonder if my grandfather did not abuse him.
I see. That was my question. Do you have any idea whether he was abused?
He denies it, but you have to understand my dad lived in denial.
Ah.
He, he tried to commit suicide twice.
Then it's very clear to me that there has been something that went on in his life as he was a child.
Well, I know for a fact, and a lot of the family members are still living, so I won't drag them into it. But I do know for a fact, again, my mom discovered some of this, actually caught the relatives in the act with my grandfather abusing other people.
Hmm.
And so in the family. So there's no doubt in my mind. And there's actually paperwork that I found after my dad's death, which is we're only in 2010, that document the abuse of this family.
Is your mother still alive?
My mom is still alive. She's going to be 80.
Oh, okay.
She can still bowl, double ringer horseshoes,
Wow.
and plays a mean game of bingo.
Oh,
She's a
mean.
sweetheart.
Okay. Well, you see, here is the interesting part, though. You are able to recover out of this, and you have written this book. This book is written particularly for those who are getting abused and also those who are not abused. Correct?
Yes, yes. I really feel when I wrote it, it really came to my heart that it would reach everyone. It would help people who've been abused to deal and know that their feelings are normal and to know they can heal. It will help people who don't understand abuse, don't understand and take on that mentality, get over it. I hate that we live in a society that says, whatever, get over it. My friends will not use those terms with me. I don't like that American get over it, get a life, whatever. But it will help people who don't understand abuse understand not only how it happens, but why it's kept a secret and why the victim doesn't speak up. And then it will also, I really believe, if an abuser will read it, they will really see for the first time the devastation that they have caused because
Yes.
they minimize it. My
Yes.
dad minimized what he did to me.
Hmm. Yes. Now, did you know? What about your brothers? Were they spared from this abuse?
We all had different abuse. My brothers suffered tremendous emotional abuse from
Emotional
their,
abuse.
yes, and we all suffered physical abuse from the woman who lived with us. Um, as far as the other aspects, I I can't speak for that. I but it just was it was abuse. There was just no way around it. And you look at even the situation. You're 6, 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My brothers were 8, 9, and 10. Uh, we had just found out that my mom and dad was going to separate, and the reason they were going to finally separate was not because of his affairs, but because he had got my niece who lived with us. At 16, he got her pregnant.
Oh, so he was not in good shape at all, mentally and otherwise, and he was really bad news.
He carried a full job. He never missed a day's work. The little valley I grew up in thought he was a, they martyred him.
Oh,
They said he's raising 4 kids on his own and what a great father he is. And oh, he drinks a little bit, but he's a cool guy. But we were the ones with my mom that night walked in and found him at the gas stove trying to commit suicide.
hmm.
It was a phone call I had with him when I was 14, 13, maybe
Uh huh.
12, 13.
Hmm.
We were at my mom's staying all night with her like we did on the weekends, and he called me up and he was drinking. And the rule with us kids by then, I was 12, so my brothers were 13, 14, 15. We knew how to work this now. It was like talk to him a few minutes, get him calmed down, and then let him go drink, let him go sleep it off.
Hmm.
And
So
he, I,
you guys were actually acting as the adults at a young age.
we became the family. My
Yeah.
brothers and I became the knit family together when we were together. And my sister-in-law still says you could walk in a room with the four of us and a whole conversation goes on and not a word said.
Wow.
We have that bond between us. And but that night I got off the phone and he was in a really sour mood. And I got my brothers and I said, now it had been 7 years since he had tried to commit suicide. And I said to my brothers, we have to go over. And they were, no, sis, let him sleep it off. You go over, he'll just get upset, just leave. And I started crying and I said, we have got to go over. I said, he's going to hurt himself. And they said, why did he threaten that? And I said, no. I said, but I know in my heart he's going to try to do something. So we all got in a car. My mom went with us. She wouldn't let us go alone. And we went in and he was at the gas stove doing a pretty good job. I almost succeeded that time of trying to commit suicide.
Wow.
But you ask about abuse. I mean, that's not a good thing for kids to grow up. If there was nothing else that happened in their life, finding your dad twice by the gas stove isn't a good experience. So we minimize abuse sometimes, and I think people need to go back and they might say, I go into the prisons. I've done prison work for the last 8 years. I volunteer and I go in and talk with the women. And I spoke with one woman one time, and she said, well, my uncle did this and this and this and this, but she said, I don't really think I was abused, Marty.
Really?
And I could not even get her to the victim stage because she had denied so much what had happened. And yet she's sitting in prison. She didn't have good parents. The only one that she really looked up to was his uncle. She still thought he was the good guy.
Wow. He's the worst guy.
Yeah. And people have to understand that when people are shattered, I called the book The Shattering. Um, People are shattered. You know, you can fix a broken cup. You can glue the handle back on, but when you're shattered, when your soul is shattered, it's more than Humpty Dumpty can put together again. It takes a God who made us physical, emotional, and mental. We're physical, we're emotional, and we're spiritual.
Hmm.
And God made us that way. And he can put Humpty Dumpty back. Matter of fact, he makes us a new creature in him. But we can heal. But we have to deal first. And my biggest problem with people is getting them to deal with what they went through because they want to minimize it. They don't want to deal with the pain of it.
Most of the time I realize listening to your conversation, those who are abused um, just don't accept it, or don't accept it, and they deny it simply because that's the only way they can keep their sanity,
It is.
right? And they just forget the whole thing. Any bad experience, the human brain has a tendency to forget, and it is goes under the deep recesses of their brains. But at the same time, it is in the subconscious mind, so now it's going to direct their entire life. And if the subconscious mind doesn't take it positively, or really nothing in the situation of of this type cannot be taken positively. But if it doesn't spin a positive outcome out of it, that's where they become either destructive to themselves or destructive to others, or they will perpetuate the cycle of violence towards the next generation. So when did you get the same feelings? When you get angry, did you have any kind of inclination? Maybe I should beat up my kid.
No, mine again. Not that I'm perfect or I didn't have feelings because I did, but my bullet kind of ricocheted inside of me. I tended to. I thought of suicide. I
Okay,
would have been one that went that route.
yeah,
I would have rather killed myself before I hurt someone else.
right.
But the problem is that your brain, they talk about post-traumatic syndrome, from the war and all. The victims of abuse suffer that very much the same because there are triggers. I can hear a song from my childhood and I'm right back there.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
I can have a certain smell.
I know you
My,
are right back there.
yeah. Now with me, it's beer because my
Beer?
dad was a beer
What
drinker.
about my beer?
Beer,
Oh,
beer.
you said you
Here
said
you
you said beard. So I said, wait a minute,
yeah,
maybe my
yeah.
beard is going to cause some problem here. Okay, good.
No, it's not your beard. It's
Yeah,
the alcohol.
alcohol drinking beer.
The beer,
Okay.
yes. But the smell of beer is a real trigger
So
for
you do you if you go to a bar, just as a for social occasion, or you go to a party and they are serving beer, does this cause distress in your psychology?
not so much now.
Yeah.
Uh, Earlier, in my life, when I went off to college,
Yeah.
I just wouldn't go to the parties.
Right.
I had no desire for many reasons. I guess some people choose to go that way because of it, and some people choose to go the other way because of it. I still think the guiding factor for me was that I had God in my heart. Uh,
I see.
that made the difference for me. He showed me I could be more. What happened to me did what the victim needs to know is that what happens to you doesn't define who you are, and unless someone teaches you that and tells you that, you accept that.
I see.
This is what I am. You
I
know,
see.
I would have never felt worthy to marry my husband if
Really?
God hadn't changed that in my identity.
See, in other words, what you were saying is your self-esteem got to a point where you can actually accept an husband like what you have. That was only possible after you were able to, improve your self-esteem. Otherwise, you think that I'm not worthy of this man.
Oh, I definitely. If God hadn't made the difference in my heart,
Yes.
if God hadn't showed me that this is not who you are, I would have ended up like my cousin. My
Uh,
dad destroyed my cousin's life. That was
what
a very
happened
hard
to what
thing.
happened to the cousin?
The cousin that he got pregnant.
He got pregnant, and her life was pretty much in the doldrums.
Oh, he destroyed it.
Hmm.
She
She
never
never
did.
recovered.
No.
You were telling me, as on a little fancier note, you were telling me that certain things in your life bring up um, certain smells, certain
Hmm.
songs, and
Hmm.
certain sceneries, certain perfumes or whatever. That causes brings you back into the memories. And
Hmm.
I was just thinking at the time, certain songs make me very upset. Then I realized these songs make me upset because I was rejected by that particular girlfriend while that was going on.
Exactly. Do you know it's a fact, and I wish I remembered where I had read this from, but it's a fact that when your brain has a memory,
Yes.
it doesn't know it's a memory.
Ah.
So it will release the same brain chemicals
Correct.
that it did. So if it's a happy memory, you get serotonin release. But if it's a sad memory, like if it's a memory like with what my dad did, that's where the healing was so pertinent, because as I dealt with that, my brain saw that memory as it was happening right then. So you have to go through that, and that's where your brain and your emotion and your soul and your God heal it and bring it
You
together.
know, that's very interesting because I was, what, 2 weeks back, I was driving in upstate New York, and I was going through, on Interstate 87, and I was playing a music. The music has triggered something else, and then I looked out there. There was a rest area, and then I say, "Wait a minute, what is this? This is deja vu," because this is exactly what happened. I was playing this music, and this restroom came up when I was kicked out from my girlfriend, and she said that she doesn't want to see me anymore. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so do you get the same feelings now? Even now, it is very strong.
No, no, I have to say, the more that I healed, the less it affects me. And
Ah,
I think that's a little barometer of where you, like when my dad said that to me that day, don't start something you can't finish,
right.
the barometer went way to the right. It's
Ah,
like, it was like God said, you're not healed here.
right.
And I'd have another confrontation with him when I was in, and God would say, he said to me one time, I think you make more of it than it is.
Hmm.
Um, but in the next book, when I get to all that confrontation and showing people how God used it for healing, um, God does something to my dad a week before he dies on a
What did he?
positive note.
Are you going to share that, or you want to readers to buy the next book?
I think I'll save that for the next one, because I want people, rather than just know, I want them to know the messages they can heal. That's the main thing. And I want them to know that healing's a journey. Now we live in a microwave generation, and everyone wants patience, but they want it right now.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
society we
Everybody
live.
want everybody else to be patient, but
Yeah,
not us.
everyone wants everything right now.
Yes,
So when I talk to people, well, you need to heal. It's like, okay, what pill do I take to heal?
that's it.
And it's like, you have to deal to heal to feel. And I said, it's a journey, and God's going to walk you through that journey. And the stages are, you got to release that anger. And somewhere there's a whole teaching session alone just on what forgiveness is and how to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a whole teaching session on how we take what happened to us, and instead of hurting, we help. We don't hurt ourselves either. But a lot of that comes into, I was at one seminar I was doing, and I believe in counseling. I really believe people need to get counseling, and there's such a shame to that. But they really should seek counseling, and make sure you have a good counselor. If it's a
Right.
counselor that you're not getting help, if your doctor's not good, you switch. Get. I even prefer a Christian counselor, because they'll look at not just the emotional being, but they'll look at the spiritual, emotional, and the mental, because we are physical, and there a lot of people are the chemical imbalance. A lot of people have emotional issues, and a lot of people have spiritual issues, and you can have all three of them, and
Right.
that's a real mess. But the thing people need to know, that counselors can help you deal with the problem, but I don't know a counselor that I've ever talked to that says they can heal you. Only God can heal you. Counselors help you deal with the issues. God will heal you from the issues. Counselors will give you the tools to help to overcome what you went through, but they can't give you the strength to use those tools. Only God can give you the strength. Counselors can only do so much. They can tell you how to find your identity, but only God can give you your identity.
Very good, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to our featured guest, Marsha Barth, and her book is The Shattering. And I am your host, Dr. Ravi, and welcome back to Global Radio and TV Live. So the number to call is 469-307-1642. Marsha, so this book is now sold everywhere, including Amazon.com. The Shattering.
Yes, Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, Books a Million, any of your bookstores will order it through the
All right.
distributor.
What is the title for the next book?
I haven't said for sure. I want it to be known that it's a sequel to The Shattering, because people will know that it's connected. But Finding Julie, The Healing Journey.
Right. So the Julie was the name of the character in your book that I was reading through. And
Yes, that's me.
that's you practically.
That's me. Yes,
Yes.
I did change the names. I always need to tell people that, and I forget. But
Yeah, well, I think it's a great book, and I was able to read some of the excerpts from that book. So the next book, when do you plan to write it, and when our audience can expect the next book?
I have it half done.
Half done.
My husband is my best supporter and critic, and he says you need to be doing more of your writing and less of your other. But they go hand in hand.
Right. Now, do you have enough time now, or do you work other than this book?
Um, the book came out last year, and we sold our business last year that we had
What
for
business
20.
you had?
We had a garden center and
Garden
gift
center.
shop. Yes.
That's a very relaxing hobby.
Oh my goodness. We did it 60 to 80-hour weeks for 27 years, so we had lost the relaxation part of it somewhere.
Well, I guess the relaxation part is for those who are just tending to the garden, not running it as a
Yes,
business.
yes,
All
yes.
right. So the next book will be coming back, coming to the shops. I mean, coming to the stores probably within a year or so,
Yes, I would like to have it out by early next year.
early
Yes.
next year. Okay, so here is we would like to do, Marsha. We would like to have you back and come back and finish up that book, and let's go through that, and perhaps we get you back on the show one more time. Please call our office, and we will get on it.
I thank you, Dr. Ravi. And if people are they're in a situation now and need help, uh, contact me on my website.
Okay, now can you go ahead and tell your website one more time?
If they Google Marsha, Marsha, Barth, Barth, everything will come up. But if they want to go specifically, they can put Marsha Barth Tate, Tate, author.com. But if they even just Google Marsha Barth, my website will come up. I have blogs on there, contact if they need help, and I can help them in any way.
Oh, okay. So the ladies and gentlemen, the website is marshabarth.tate, T-A-T, tateauthor.com. And you can also just Google her name, Marsha Barth, and you should be able to get it. So, Marsha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Thank you so much.
Marsha, please stay on the line for a few more minutes. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back.